You a little short for a stormtrooper?
What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode. I stuttered because I was about to say another huge episode. I guess we've done huge episodes in the past.
This one's pretty huge.
This one's pretty huge. Anyway, this intro is getting away from me. What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of the Multiverse Report. We are recapping James Gunn and Peter Safran's plan for the DCU from Gotham City to Metropolis to themyscira to a Louisiana Swamp and the 25th century and everywhere in between. My name is Mike Gibson. With me as always is Steve Haller. What's up, Steve?
Well, what's up now is the video for anybody who's actually watching us, but also a heck of a lot of news because, well,
it finally happened.
It did happen.
It's
like the old M&M's commercial. It does exist.
Yeah, they do exist. Yeah, he didn't lie. He said it was coming in January.
Yeah.
He waited till the absolute last day of January to do it. Yeah, it happened. We've been talking about it for weeks, but James Gunn and Peter Safran apparently met with members of the press yesterday on the Warner Brothers studio lot.
And they didn't even invite us?
I can't believe it. I can't believe we didn't get a press invite for that. Maybe next time. Maybe next announcement.
There you
go. Media outlets were told that they could drop their information at noon Eastern Standard Time today, which they did, 9 o'clock Pacific time. And at that time, 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time, James Gunn posted a 6-minute-ish video of himself introducing each project and talking his way through them as well. Obviously, like the media outlets, Hollywood Reporter was the first article that I read. They got a lot. Those articles are more in depth than a 6-minute video based on things that were said at the meeting yesterday at Warner Brothers. So we're going to kind of run through everything that was talked about, including what their thoughts on the state of the current universe, why they wanted to do it, or how they see it going, their plans for not only the projects that they want to do, but also like the projects that are already done that are coming out or being finalized. We're going to kind of run through everything and then talk about everything that is actually happening. They announced 10 films and 10 TV shows, TV series, and they made it clear that this was only part of the announcement. This was not everything. And I got to say, 10 projects, Steve, I think that's way more than I was thinking. I thought we were going to get maybe 5.
I thought they were going to go 10 polls and that was about it. And maybe like a couple things filling in the gaps. They went everything down to, what seems to be relatively minor animation. So it was comprehensive.
Yeah, like you just said, we did our predictions, on Sunday's episode, and most of our predictions were like A-list kind of stuff. And I think we mentioned maybe that we think we're going to get one random wild card thing. We got a couple.
Right.
We got a couple.
Yeah, I think we called like one James Gunny thing. And,
exactly.
Yeah,
we got at least 2 to 3 of those.
Right. One of which he's writing and already has written.
Yes. It's already in production. So we were we got some things right in our predictions, I gotta say, and we got some things right in a way that you could interpret them as being kind of correct.
I'd say we take it as a win.
Yeah. And we got some things. I mean, we just had no idea that certain things would be mentioned. So anyway, let's dive into I don't know, kind of like overhead thoughts. Gunn came out and spoke to the press. Anyway, all the information that we're about to run through, I should give credit to. It's taken from either the 6-minute video that James Gunn posted himself, the Hollywood Reporter breakdown of this news, and a media outlet called Above the Line, which is an outlet I've been following more closely lately. I think they do a pretty good job. So all the information is like kind of amalgamated, and I kind of organize it in a certain way, whatever, so we could talk through it. But those are the 3 sources that all this information is coming from. So check those out if you want to, fact check me, I guess. So,
that's why you went to Above the Line, Snyder.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
our scooper that we
Frequent
like,
scooper. Yep.
Jeff Snyder. I think it's his outlet, and he's got it kind of up and running. And yeah, they do really good stuff, and I trust that guy. So you go with the people you trust, right, Steve?
Absolutely.
So apparently, Gunn pretty much blatantly addressed the troubled history of Warner Brothers films when it comes to their DC intellectual properties. And he said the following: I know there's been a lot of hitches, a lot of problems, but comic books are in my blood. These characters are in my blood. He was very candid.
Oh,
He was
100%.
not holding back, as you will see from the following sentence. We all know it's been a fucked up road for many of them over the past few years. It's a challenge, but there's a chance to do something really wonderful. The history has been shit, but it's been a fucked up journey. They, meaning Warner Brothers, were giving out intellectual property to creatives who smiled at the people in charge, and then the people in charge didn't even really have any power. We have a lot to prove. So really coming out guns blazing and blaming the previous people in charge of Warner Brothers for screwing up, which I agree with. I think it's largely their fault for either trusting maybe a certain filmmaker too much, or not trusting their filmmakers at all, being very reactionary.
Yeah, it was very pendulum swingy. Like they went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
When neither was the right maneuver.
Exactly. Yep. And he, addressing that and saying that he knows that we have a lot to prove. He says so. He knows that, and he is conscious of that, and it's good to know that that's kind of going to be something that's informing his plans here. He did.
Yeah, I was going to say he did kind of confirm something that we had thought about and bandied about a couple of times, and it seems like they're using the DC Elseworlds banner as a very big piece to keep some of the continuities they want to going. So they announced specifically the Batman, Joker, and Teen Titans Go. All three things that, well, two of three things that we 100% wanted more of, and then the Joker, which I haven't seen yet, so I really don't have any opinion on. But so they announced they'll be under Elseworlds. Also, the J.J. Abrams Ta-Nehisi Coates Black Superman film is still in development. So
that was a shock.
Yeah,
I did not expect that.
That was kind of going the way of a lot of those projects. You're like, oh, we're really excited about this, and it's going nowhere. Great.
Yeah.
But apparently it's still churning back there. So
good. I'm down for that. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just umming.
Okay. Well, yeah. I love that they're using the Elseworlds banner because it's from the comics. Elseworlds was kind of DC's version of the What If, Marvel What If storyline. Elseworlds are stories that take place outside of the main continuity. They don't really use it too much anymore because there's just so many stories that are maybe in or maybe out or whatever, so it's not something that you hear all the time, but it certainly is a recognizable phrase amongst DC fans. And I really like that they specifically mentioned Teen Titans Go, just because it's my son's favorite show. And it's like so fun, it's so like out there, and it's popular. It's been on for like 7 years, so 7 seasons or whatever. So to dump that just for the sake of continuity would seem silly, because it's like a Looney Tunes show, like there's no real continuity to that show. It's in itself, so it seems wild that they would get rid of that.
Along those, sorry, it just spurned something that happened tonight. We've officially started the Batman and Scooby-Doo mysteries in this house.
Oh, nice! Congratulations!
And my son was extremely excited about it. So
awesome! Yeah, those are great. Yeah. Those are great. I hope you guys like them a lot.
Yep.
They didn't specify this, but I mean, unless it's getting canceled, and it's pretty popular, but I assume like the Harley Quinn show would also be under the Elseworlds banner moving forward, like that. If it continues.
I mean, hell, even any of the HBO stuff, if it continues or doesn't. Although, are we down to anything left besides Harley Quinn?
The only other thing that would be left that I can think of is Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
The CW show.
Right.
Which I know it's also very popular. It's gotten 3 seasons. It's one of the most watched things on HBO Max. Didn't we talk about that a couple weeks ago on the pod, how popular it is? So I can see them saving that, maybe turning it into an HBO Max exclusive, but then is that too much Superman? Like, who knows?
Now, is that that's part of like the standard CW Arrowverse continuity type? Or is that
I think,
separate?
I think technically that show takes place on a different Earth, but is within that Arrowverse continuity. It's spun out of that Arrowverse, but put itself on a different world, so they didn't have to deal with Arrow, Flash, Legends continuity there. But Peter Safran said that the bar is very high for projects to exist outside of their continuity, but admitted that it's possible that things could come up that are just, great that they want to do. They're, too good to pass up kind of thing. But it's not going to be, it's seemingly the majority of DC stuff will be part of their continuity. This one big story that they keep talking about. They both praised the upcoming slate of DC films, Shazam 2, The Flash. James Gunn called The Flash one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen. He also mentioned Blue Beetle being fantastic and Aquaman 2. He said of The Flash, besides it being excellent, he said The Flash will reset the entire DCU. Came right out and said that. That's something that we've been theorizing about for forever.
Yeah.
Now is confirmed. And he also said, in talking about these, he did say Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, will lead directly into what they're planning for the DCU. So that's not like a hard no. And when asked about any of those actors from those films carrying on in his DCU, he said there is nothing that is preventing that from happening. So I guess it's still kind of a question mark as to whether or not some of these characters will move on.
Right.
I still think the most likely one is the cast of Blue Beetle, because I think they mentioned that is its own. It's not really connected to like the Snyder DCU or other DC films right now. So it could be in whatever continuity. That seems like the easiest be the easiest one to move on.
Could spin it however they need to, and
yep.
Though his statement about Aquaman leading directly into what they're planning, that almost makes that Momoa news more confusing. Because if Aquaman is directly tied to what's happening in the DCU, it's not like you're going to take that and then be like, oh yeah, and that Aquaman is no longer Aquaman, here's another guy, when we have that Aquaman and want to work with him. Exactly.
And it makes me think, like, I'm sure they could figure out a way to do whatever, but it almost makes me think, like, when he said leads directly into, does he mean that, like, that comes out in December and our thing comes out in January or whatever, like it, like, just timetable wise leads direct, it's just like the thing before the next thing. It subsequently will lead us to the next thing. Or does it mean like plot wise and universe wise? Who knows? And I guess that remains to be seen. But speaking of returning actors, he did touch on a number of them. You and I predicted that we would hear a confirmation on whether or not Gal Gadot is coming back, and we did not get one. We were wrong about that. Gunn said that he and Peter Safran have spoken to Gal Gadot, and while she is willing to return as Wonder Woman, they're not sure if that will happen or even when, or if it will happen or when it will happen, if it does. So that's still up in the air, apparently, right now. As far as Henry Cavill, someone asked him about firing Henry Cavill, and he said, we didn't fire Henry. Henry was never cast, which is true. Yep. They did not cast Henry Cavill. The Rock, went around a bunch of people's heads and got him to be at the end of Black Adam, but he was never cast in anything by James Gunn and Peter Safran, and that's not his fault at all. He went on to say, I like Henry. I think he's a great guy. I think this is another blatant admission of the previous regime.
And this is a direct quote from him.
A direct quote from James Gunn. I like Henry. I think he's a great guy. I think he's getting dicked around a lot by a lot of people, including the former regime at this company. Damn.
Yeah.
But this Superman is not Henry for a number of reasons. And I think those reasons will be clearer as we get more information on the Superman movie that he's writing. As far as Jason Momoa, he clarified that, James Gunn clarifying that Jason Momoa will not play 2 roles. So they'll revisit that conversation after Aquaman 2 comes out. I'm pretty sure they will revisit it. What's that?
I'm just picturing him in like fish costume and then having to run over to the trailer, get Lobo like pasted onto his face, and then running back out. And
yeah, he seems smart enough to know that that's a bad idea. Like coming out, like he's not going to do both.
Right.
And like that's the only quote that I could find. He said Jason will not play 2 roles, but like I don't know what the question was. Was the question, is he going to play Lobo? Like,
right.
How is this framed? And did he say it in a way that led towards him playing Lobo or led towards him playing Aquaman? I don't know. I wasn't in that room. And I'm pretty sure they're going to revisit that conversation before Aquaman 2 comes out, but we just won't hear anything about it until after Aquaman 2 comes out, depending on what happens in Aquaman 2. Maybe he dies.
Right.
Who knows? And we get Aqualad or whatever, like a new Aquaman steps up. Who knows?
Yeah.
Zachary Levi. This is something that kicked up this week. So it was, I think I probably would have talked about it Sunday, but I missed it until like Sunday night, Monday morning. I didn't realize. Apparently Zachary Levi responded to somebody on Twitter. Someone asked him about if he thought Pfizer was like an evil company or something, or if Pfizer was evil, and he said yes, and a lot of people took that to mean he was anti-vax because we associate Pfizer with the Pfizer
shitty company.
It's a big company, yeah, exactly. So he has not come out to clarify anything, I think, which is also making people think that they're right about him being an anti-vaxxer. Comparisons to Letitia Wright and all the stuff that we were saying about her. We meaning the fan base, not just you and me. So anyway,
I mean, I'll go on the record thinking or saying that Pfizer isn't a great company, but
no, I think it's a
you
terrible
can stab
company,
me in the arm as many times as you want.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that.
You can keep COVID out of my body as best you want, best you can. But so regarding the recent possible anti-vaxxer controversy, James Gunn said, actors, filmmakers that I work with are going to say things that I don't agree with. Oh, sorry. They're going to say things that I agree with and things that I don't agree with. I can't be changing my plans all the time because an actor says something that I don't agree with. At the same token, if someone is doing something that is morally reprehensible, that's a different story, and we have to take that into account. So I think
which segues nice into the next person we're going to talk about.
It sure does segue nice into Ezra Miller. I think that's a good way to go. It's not like, Marvel didn't fire Letitia Wright for being publicly anti-vax. And that movie turned out fine. So, sometimes depends, there's a sliding scale of, cancelable actions. And just
like you said, if it's something that, yes. Do I agree you should be anti-vax? No, not at all.
Right.
Do I care enough for you to lose your job for some reason over it? Also no. Yeah.
But as you said, leading into Ezra Miller, Peter Safran said this about Ezra Miller. Ezra is completely committed to their recovery. We are fully supportive of that journey they are on right now. When the time is right, when they are ready to have that discussion, we will all figure out the best path forward. But right now, they are completely focused on their recovery, and in our conversations with them in the last couple of months, it feels like they are making enormous progress. So it's kind of a non-answer,
right?
But it's also accurate. I hope it's accurate, and that's because that's the best thing for them to be doing right now, for Ezra Miller to be doing, is taking care of themselves, getting mentally healthy again. And I don't know, I get it. Like, we talked about it all depends on how well The Flash does. If it does great, and Ezra Miller has gotten back into a place where they can enter society and not be a danger to it, right, then maybe it's all right. There's going to be, no matter what, there's going to be people that don't ever forgive Ezra Miller or can't look past behavior. That's just, they're going to have to weigh that, like they said, when the time comes. So, so I think that's kind of a smart move for them as well. So moving towards, we're almost there, guys. We're almost there. Hold on, listeners. We're almost to the good stuff. Actually, I think all this is really good stuff too. So
I think it very much is on the global, like, what is being planned. I guess the fact they have a plan. That's the biggest thing this is giving us is some sort of confidence that they actually have a roadmap for what they're doing.
And they're not taking it lightly at all. He talked about how like a big responsibility. He understands. He said something. I didn't put this in the rundown, but he said it's something like it's not just a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's a one-time opportunity. Like I'm the first and only person that will be able to do this for the first time. Yeah. So he says like, how could I say no to that? So in talking about their approach for the new DCU, so that was all like the past stuff, right? Past and not too distant future leading into their DCU. So getting into their plans for their story and their slate, he said they're putting a big emphasis on, from everything I read, they're putting a big emphasis on storytelling and screenwriting, which I think is great. He said a team of writers is already working, referring to them as like the architects of their DCU. He is excited about, quote, seeing seemingly incongruent things come together, which I totally get because that's comics. That's like, and it's phase 1 of the MCU leading into Avengers. Like we were all asking, like, how are they going to make Captain America, or how do they make Iron Man, which is very science based, work with Thor, which is like mythology based. But the fun of that is figuring that out and seeing those two characters interact and clash, but also at the same time complement each other in certain ways. So like, I like that he is focused on that specifically, like seemingly incongruent things coming together, like making, how do you solve that puzzle? How do you bring these two things together in a way that fits together? He wanted to say, it's not the Gunverse, like James Gunn universe. It's not the Gunverse. It's not. It's got to be all these different feels from all these different stories. That's what makes it so fun. The stories are completely different, and each has the individual expression of the writers and the director that are making those projects. But we're not stupid. Not every filmmaker is going to be happy, because if someone is doing something that isn't working, we're going to be honest. So I really like this statement because he seems to recognize what makes superhero team ups fun. They're not all the same. They don't feel the same. They don't act the same. And he seems to be prioritizing the vision of specific writers and directors that are in charge of these movies, but also saying, I'm not going to be afraid to tell somebody, to fire somebody or to tell someone they have to start over if something's not going to work out. It really speaks to like a focus on quality more than anything else, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess it's something that hasn't been there before. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. The storytelling has kind of always been the part that's been lacking. They haven't been lacking in the big flashy stuff.
It's always been, I mean, the previous regime, this whole thing started because they're trying to play catch up with Marvel and they were trying to rush things. So yes, they weren't thinking about it. They weren't thinking about it as, they weren't worried about a good story. There's like whatever story that's going to make us $1 billion, throw up onto the screen.
And they did that.
They did that a few times.
How many times you can milk that cow? I don't know.
They found out.
Yeah.
They found out, I think 3.
3 is the number.
Let's see. If we're counting, I mean, Man of Steel was okay. That did like okay business box office wise, and it got okay reviews. Batman, Superman, great box office, but that was like a thing where they're just like, throw up any completely nonsensical plot, and it made a bunch of money. Suicide Squad, throw up any nonsensical, any plot that doesn't make sense, and it made a bunch of money.
Yep.
And then, Justice League. That did not make a bunch of money with a plot that made no sense. So the 3 times, I think, is the amount of time. Well, I guess twice. You do it successfully twice. 3rd time, not the charm. Anyway, so speaking of the writers that they're working with, he's got some really good ones.
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Is our theme music playing again?
It was.
Okay. I was like, who's talking? Is my wife down here?
Yeah.
What's going on? He's got some really good writers already attached, and he doesn't really say specifically what they're all working on. He mentioned later we'll find out what 2 of them are working on, but he didn't mention all of them. But the writers that he has attached to his DC universe are himself, obviously. We know he's writing the Superman movie. Tom King, comic book writer extraordinaire, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which we thought, that was a theory. I had talked about that on a previous episode, that I saw Tom King mentioning he's working on quote-unquote Hollywood stuff, and I thought, well, I was like, well, he's a DC exclusive writer, so he's probably working on James Gunn stuff, and I was right. So Tom King, Crystal Henry was one of the writers of the HBO Watchmen series. Heyo. Christina Hodson, who is very experienced in the DC universe. She wrote Birds of Prey. She wrote the unreleased Batgirl, and she wrote The Flash, which is apparently one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. So good to keep her around. Jeremy Slater, who's a writer on Umbrella Academy and Moon Knight. Pretty great.
Yeah.
Jeremy Carver, who is the head writer and showrunner of Doom Patrol. So keeping him in-house, which is also great. And Drew Goddard, who is a well-known writer in nerddom. He has written for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Daredevil, created the show, the Netflix Daredevil show, Cabin in the Woods, and Cloverfield. So
yeah, that's a decent track record.
Yeah, he knows his way around a nerdy genre, that guy. So I don't know what he's working on, but I don't know. Maybe we could speculate.
I don't know what he's working on, but I want to see it.
But I am dying to see it, yes.
I mean, who would DC's Daredevil be?
Batman?
That's kind of where I was like, well, it's kind of Batman, but not. But maybe.
Yeah. That's a close. I mean, street level, city. I mean, no powers, but
right.
I don't know. Maybe.
It's like Iron Man and Daredevil just split. Like Batman split into those two.
That's perfect. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, okay, now we're getting into it. We're getting into the slate here.
Here's the meat.
Here's the meat. Thank you for paying attention to us for this long. Or maybe just skip to this. Maybe Steve can put the time code if you don't care about everything else. So they're referring to this as Chapter 1. You know, Marvel has phases. Apparently we're going to have chapters over here at DC. Chapter 1 is called Gods and Monsters, which I love. Love that title. Peter Safran said, Chapter 1 tells cohesive stories that highlight love, compassion, and the innate goodness of the human spirit, all designed to minimize audience confusion and maximize audience engagement across platforms. I like that. And one of the articles I read specifically said that they talked about, of course, you know, like if they're doing a Superman movie and they're doing like, you know, whatever, another movie over here, Superman might show up, but they want to make sure that people aren't confused if they haven't seen the Superman movie, or if they haven't, you know, they want, of course, like some confusion or some things is inevitable because it's a one story, but they're going to do their best to eliminate that. So he says minimize audience confusion, I think is great, because that's something I talk about with Marvel all the time. Like, I feel like it's almost impossible now for Marvel to get new MCU, to get the MCU, not the books Marvel, but like the MCU Marvel to attract new fans. Because like, oh yeah, this movie's coming out, it's going to be great, but you need to watch 30 other movies and 6 TV shows. Right. You know, like that's a lot. I feel like they need more entry points. Exactly, yeah. So anyway, Gods and Monsters, Chapter 1. Now, they emphasize that these projects are only part of Chapter 1, not all of Chapter 1. So we have more coming down the pike at some point. Split this up into, we mentioned they announced 5 movies and 5 TV shows. So we're going to talk about the movies first and then the TV shows. Movies, not surprising, Superman. The title is Superman Legacy. And this is the only new movie announced that has a date. And that date is July 11th. I wrote 15th for some reason, but I know it's the 11th. 2025. So we got some time to wait, but I think it's going to be worth it. Mm-hmm. Because, as you know, we've talked about Marvel a lot lately. We talk about Marvel positively all the time, but we have also recently talked about them in a negative way, where we think they're rushing and they're trying to cram too much in too little amounts of time. Like if you need 2 years to make a great Superman movie, then take 2 years and give me a
Mm-hmm.
great Superman movie. I don't need it next year. Plus, very excited by the fact that I feel like, assuming this movie's going to be PG-13, by 2 years from now, I'll be able to take my 8-year-old son to a PG-13 Superman movie, and that makes me excited that he'll get to see a Superman movie in the theater, because he loves Superman. So anyway, we know this movie is being written by James Gunn. He hasn't decided if he's going to direct it or not. I am pretty sure he will. He told a story about how he was a kind of like a bit of a, he referred to himself as like a messed up kid, and his dad made an effort to bond with him over comics to kind of bring him out of his shell a little bit, and that worked. And he said he remembered walking in on his dad reading a Superman comic book by himself, and that really like cemented their relationship. So I feel like if he told that story, that makes me think that he is going to jump on the chance to like introduce a new Superman. Clearly, this character means a lot to him personally, and he's writing it. But they also talked about how this isn't the first thing that's going to come out. It's like the third project that will hit. It's the first movie of their DCU that will hit, but it is they're going to make it like the template for look and feel and style, and like this is what our DCU is.
Yeah.
It's really the flagship, which it should be because it's Superman.
No.
So knowing that, it seems like if it's their plan, it seems like he will want to be the one to direct that and establish that tone and establish whatever they're going to be establishing with that movie. Yeah.
Now, did you hear in anything that they announced, like what runs they're looking at with this, or if it's going to be something unique, or is it going to be All-Star Superman, or is it going to be something separate?
He didn't say if it's a straight adaptation of anything. He mentioned how, like Peter Safran said, it's not an origin story. He said this is a quote from Peter Safran. He says it focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. So that last description, I think, is the way all of us have wanted Superman movies to be for a long time, and they haven't been. I think all Superman fans or comic Superman fans breathed a sigh of relief reading that. Now, you mentioned specific arcs to read. I was actually thinking that I should do like an Instagram series of like Superman Legacy. You should read these books, something like what you just said. So look out for that. Maybe I'll do that if I feel motivated to.
We could go back and forth with this, because I could,
we could do that.
You throw some DC stuff together, I'll throw some Marvel stuff together.
Yeah, literally for any superhero movie, you and I could figure out a way to do that. Like, that would be great. So keep an eye out for that segment of Instagram.
Glad we're just workshopping the podcast and
everything
this
is just
on the
like
podcast.
Really just a behind closed doors meeting we're having right now.
And you can get more of that on our wait, no, we don't have a Patreon. Okay.
We haven't, not yet. Maybe we should. If I would say, because he posted the picture of him reading All-Star Superman, and in the video that he released of him talking about it, when he said the title Superman Legacy, it showed the picture that is on the cover of All-Star Superman. I feel like that is probably a lot of what he's going to
That's
take.
that standard one with him like looking out into the sun, like with his arms on his knees type thing.
He's like kind of sitting down and like head over the shoulder, looking back. So I'm gonna have to read that again. I mentioned before, like I've read it twice, and it hasn't like really hit me in a way that it has hit so many other people. So I feel like I gotta give it a third chance and really try to say
that's always one of those seminal runs they point to.
Yeah, all the time. Gunn mentioned, he didn't say who the villain was. There's no casting in any of this. They didn't mention casting for anybody. They didn't mention other characters really too much. He said, in contrast to Superman, he expects the villain of this movie to be evil, like crazy evil. He compared whoever the villain is of this movie to traditionally very evil characters in DC Comics, like Gorilla Grodd and the Joker. So I think he's trying to balance out. Superman's supposed to be the kindest person in the world. He's really trying to balance that out with a villain who is going to really challenge that aspect of Superman, which I think is interesting and smart. So that's the Superman movie. That's all we got on that. And then, bam, right out of the gate, a deep cut.
Yep.
James Gunn surprise that I would not have expected this in in a million years. I would not have known. Do you know anything? This is gonna be a movie called The Authority. Steve, do you know anything about The Authority?
I have zero idea whatsoever about The Authority. It's
okay. Yeah. Well, I know very little about it, but what I know is that a couple weeks ago we talked about how James Gunn responded to an Instagram post. Someone saying you don't have a deep enough bench to create an entire universe, which is an insane, stupid-ass thing to say about DC. And he said, between DC characters, Wildstorm and Milestone, we have plenty of characters. Mm-hmm. The Authority is originally... sorry.
Never mind. I was going to say, were you in the middle of a quote?
No. I was
going to say...
paraphrasing.
They're telling this to the guy who literally took the Guardians of the Galaxy and made them a main part of the MCU.
I know. Like what an idiot to say that. It's clearly someone that just doesn't know anything about DC comics. There's has only watched the Snyder movies and thinks those are all the characters that exist.
That's everybody.
They've been making these books since 1938. Yeah. So there's plenty of characters.
And as always, for every one that Marvel has, DC has one too. They always just go back and forth. Oh, you're doing this? We'll do this.
Yeah. Is that successful? We'll do one of those. Oh, that's successful? We'll do one of those. I feel like Marvel did that when they set up shop. They're like, what are the 10 most popular DC characters right now? Okay, we'll do one of those. We'll do one of those. We'll do one of those.
Yep.
They got an Archer guy. Let's make an Archer guy. Wildstorm was a DC imprint created by Jim Lee, famed artist Jim Lee. And they were like a spin-off. They eventually Wildstorm shut down and these characters were brought into the mainstream DCU. But the Authority are Wildstorm characters that believe the world is broken and needs to be fixed by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. So they are kind of like a little bit of gray area there. I also know that there was a most recent run on Superman, or a Superman story. It was called Superman and the Authority, where he teamed up with the Authority to take out this planet War World, which is a recurring thing in DC Comics. So some key Authority. My video just okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Some key characters from the Authority are Apollo and Midnighter. Apollo is like sun powers. Midnighter is like a brutal beat 'em up street level guy. They're also both gay and in a relationship. The character of Grifter, Swift, Flint, Deathblow, and Engineer. I don't know anything about Deathblow, but I put it on there because that name is amazing. Seems very, very 90s. Very 90s.
I was going to say, for all of the Marvel may have stole X, Y, or Z, they usually did it by making up better character names.
I don't know about that. Yeah, maybe. There's also Tom Taylor did a run on the Authority at Wildstorm, and then he actually has used some of these characters in his runs on, I think, Suicide Squad. He did a run on Suicide Squad and brought him in, and I believe Flint's actually been in a couple of them. A couple of them showed up in Superman: Son of Kal-El, I believe. So these characters have been around recently. Like I said, some of them showed up in a Superman run. It was Grant Morrison wrote Superman and the Authority. And
wait, another Morrison? Because that, if Legacy was All-Star Superman, that's Morrison. And then Morrison's written the Authority.
Yeah,
and then upcoming will be another Morrison, like a famed Morrison run.
He's taking a lot from Grant Morrison, and I think that's fine. I'm glad he likes Grant Morrison. I don't love Grant Morrison. I think Grant Morrison is okay.
Yeah.
Their Doom Patrol run is excellent. It's all time, but some of the other stuff I just think is, I don't know. It's like they try to do too much it's almost like too busy or something. I don't know. But I haven't read Superman and the Authority, and I haven't read the next thing either. So, but I probably will.
I know, like his new X-Men run, people were mixed on. I thought it was fine. Like, it wasn't anything earth-shattering, but it was.
Yeah, I guess that's
fine.
what nothing. I've never read a thing by Grant Morrison that has completely blown me away and that I thought was excellent. But I mean, no offense to them.
Well, maybe this will, because it seems to be taking a bit of a different tone. Because, you know, we're playing, especially with Gunn playing in that gray area, and he had a great quote. One of the things in the DCU is that it's not just a story of heroes and villains, said Gunn. Not every film and TV show is going to be about good guy versus bad guy. Giant things from the sky comes and good guy wins. There's white hats, black hats, and gray hats, which that last part is perfect.
I like that a lot because it opens it means they're thinking outside of the box, I guess, as far as like a formulaic superhero movie. Like not everything has to be, you know, conflict, punch, victory, you know. And I think with a team like this, I saw, shout out to another comics talking head person, YouTuber, whatever you want to call it, comics influencer, Koi Jandro. I saw his reaction to this, and he made a good point that initially, since these characters were not part of DC continuity when they were created as a commentary on DC, like superheroes in like a mainstream continuity. So they were like, you know, these are like the gray area heroes. They're not playing by like the no kill rule or like the whatever rules of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. So they were like a commentary on these characters. Now they're together. So that's weird and makes for interesting, like his Koi's comparison was that it would be like if The Boys existed within the MCU.
Right.
Yeah, or The Boys existed within DC Comics. You know, that's probably more accurate because The Boys is clearly a Justice League like analog. But so I think that's what makes this really interesting, is because they're not out to play by the rules of that Superman, you know, sets for himself or Batman sets for himself or whatever. So I feel like that's where we're going to get some good conflict out of these characters for sure. And it's one of those things where, like, I'm going to go into this with zero expectations and probably get blown away because these characters, I'm familiar with some of them, like Apollo, Midnighter, and Grifter. I've read a few times. The other ones sparingly or never. But you know, I'm going to go and be like, all right, show me an Authority movie, and be like, oh, well, this is great. You know, I'm not hanging my expectations too high.
No, but it's going to be the same thing that happened with Guardians, where
exactly
there was no expectations. There were probably dozens of us that knew the Guardians existed.
But, this is like this and the other thing are similar. There's, I would say, on the same level of like depth as the Guardians of the Galaxy being pulled out of obscurity. Like the Authority and the thing we're going to talk, the TV show we're going to talk about in a little bit, are like wildly.
The other one,
the TV show is possibly further down than Guardians was on the scale of recognizable teams.
No.
Anyway,
before we get there, let's go to something else recognizable.
Let's go something that I will have expectations for. I will not be able to not have expectations. They're making a movie called The Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold was a DC team-up book for like a long time. Every once in a while, they bring it back for another run. It was recently used as the title of a Batman animated cartoon, Batman, the Brave and the Bold. Fittingly, the Brave and the Bold movie is going to be a Batman and Robin movie. Oh my God. So excited saying that out loud. It makes me so happy. Based on Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's run on Batman. So again, I haven't read this. I have read some Batman by Grant Morrison. Again, I think it's fine. I think it's okay. But it hasn't blown my mind. But I probably will pick up this specific run just to read it. It's going to feature, now this is a spoiler for at least one person that I know is probably listening to this, and she is a friend of mine who only recently started, friend of ours, sorry, who only recently started reading comics, and I have hooked her in on the Bat family in a big bad way.
Yes.
And it's great because she doesn't know anything about these characters' histories. She was, I handed her a death in the family, and she was shocked that Jason Todd died. Like, she just didn't know that was coming at all. So this is a spoiler for her, and I'm sorry, Kate, but the Robin to be featured is not Dick Grayson. It is not Jason Todd. It is not Tim Drake. It's not Stephanie Brown. That's a bit of a spoiler too. Well, that's a pun. Sorry. Deep cut DC fans, you know how much of this pun I just referred to as Stephanie Brown as a spoiler. You get it. You get it. Steve doesn't, but you guys do. Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne will be the Robin. And why is that significant? Because Damian Wayne, as you might be able to tell by the last name, is Bruce Wayne's biological son. What?
And also James Gunn's favorite Robin.
James Gunn's favorite Robin described him as a little son of a bitch, which I believe he is. He's like kind of like just a little shit, but he's kind of like a lovable little shit, you know?
Yeah, not a little shit in the Jason Todd little shit way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he ends up becoming very close with Jonathan Kent, Superboy, and they have a wonderful buddy relationship as well. This movie is going to be a strange father and son story, is what they said. And he also said that introduces us to the DCU Bat family. So using saying the Bat family means he's got plans for other characters. And the fact that you're jumping to Damian means that if you want, you can have all those other Robins or sidekicks, team ups, whatever have you, already exist. There can already be a Nightwing. There can already be, Jason could have already died. There could already be a Tim Drake hanging out like that. Those could already be there already. And that's exciting to me. And who knows? Maybe we get a flashback to get.
You could do whatever.
Yeah. All that stuff's on the table. And I don't know. I think it's great. I'm very excited by this, by the opportunity to have a specifically Batman and Robin movie, because it gives us, the way he was kind of talking about Damian as like the protagonist of the movie, like it more like I can't remember what the quote I read, but something I read made me think that, is this Damian's movie and Batman's just like a secondary character? Because that would be interesting. And to focus the movie on a father-son relationship is a unique take for any Batman movie that we've seen so far. It also gives us an older Bruce Wayne, certainly older than Robert Pattinson's version of Batman that'll be going on at the same time, which I think is smart. And hopefully, because this takes place in a larger DCU, I've mentioned this before, I would love for this Batman to be able to take on wackier, weirder, more mythical or more magic style villains. Like, it doesn't just have to be like Joker and Riddler and Catwoman. Like, give me Clayface, give me Mr. Freeze, give me the Mad Hatter, like something like wild and crazy that makes sense in a big superhero world and maybe makes less sense for a grounded and gritty Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves Batman. Like, Clayface doesn't really make sense in that world. I can't see watching the Batman and then being like,
you would have to kind of like, I don't know, anthropomorphize him, and it doesn't make sense for the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you'd have to make it a mobster whose face was melted or something like that.
You'd have to ruin the character.
Right, exactly. You'd have to make Super Mario Brothers 1992.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like that. I like that they're seemingly setting it up to be so different than the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, Batman universe. So very excited about that. 2 more movies. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now, this is going to be, according to James Gunn, pretty much a straight adaptation of the series written by Tom King and illustrated by Bilquis Evely. It came out last year, or it started in 2021 and ended in 2022. This is a very recent story, very popular. He said it was one of his favorite comic stories that he read last year. And I read a few issues. This is one that I was picking up for a little bit, and it's like I missed issue 4 or something. So I just fell off and I couldn't get it. So and I just haven't picked up the trade yet, but I plan to, especially now. But from the issues I read, I can say this is a story about Supergirl traveling the galaxy to help a young girl who is seeking justice for crimes that were perpetrated against like her planet and her people and her family. And it features Supergirl wielding a sword, which I think is just straight up badass.
Yeah.
James Gunn,
Tom King.
Yes, and this is the one that Tom King. I mean, I guess he didn't specify this, but he wrote it, so I can only imagine that Tom King is being consulted at least or co-writing the script for this adaptation from his comic book. James Gunn said, "We will see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, who was raised on a rock, a chip off of Krypton, who watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life, and then come to Earth. She is much more hardcore and is not the Supergirl that we're used to." So this is a bit, I think this is closer to maybe her like original origin, where she like literally witnessed, it was like she was like almost raised on like, they say like a rock. It was almost like a moon of Krypton or like a meteor or something orbiting Krypton. So she literally watched it explode and saw all these people die that were her family. And then they figured out a way to get her to Earth. So she was older when she left, but the journey took so long to get to Earth, and she was in suspended animation. So by the time she gets to Earth, she appears to be younger than her cousin Kal-El, even though she was born first. It's a whole thing.
Gotcha. But she like did the full Leia Organa and like watched her planet explode.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. That's not always the case. Sometimes the two rockets took off at the same time, and hers just got like sucked through a wormhole, so it took her longer to get there, or it got there at the same time, but it was just like at the bottom of the ocean and nobody found it for like a long time, and she just stayed asleep. But I think having her either way, it is a key difference between Supergirl and Superman, where Superman. What's happening? Is that me or you?
That's you.
Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'd assume an ad of some sort, but you got some chicken on the barbie.
I had a tab open that started telling me about Outback Steakhouse. That tab has been open for hours and made zero noise. I don't know why I chose right now to start acting up. It's insane.
Oh God.
Anyway,
I love our random outtakes sometimes.
Yeah, right. Jeez. Was I saying? Oh yeah, it's always a clear difference between Superman and Supergirl, where Superman left Krypton as an infant and has no memories of it himself. Kara was there for 14 years, was a teenager, grew up on Krypton, and remembers her family, remembers what it was like, remembers her life there. So the destruction of Krypton kind of haunts her in a different way because she has a memory of it. Superman just respects it, but doesn't have a physical memory of growing up there because he didn't. So I think that's cool that they're adapting a comic book straight up.
Yeah.
And that I hope he does more of this. Like, I hope, I remember when like Suicide Squad came out, there was like trailers, and at the end of the trailers, they said, read these comics, or like Suicide Squad comics from DC Comics published, they said like a shout out to the comics. Even doing this and saying like, I'm doing this because I loved this book, like giving people like, here, go read this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, direct us back to comics, please. Because as we said, was there some like Marvel report where like this was like a long time ago, but like Marvel collected and editions and trades were like way down, like they weren't in the top like 10 sellers of like books or something like that. And we were like, why does so many people go see these movies and no one reads the books? Like, what is going on?
Right.
So
like these books
I think
have an even longer history of these other stories that are usually like, there's plenty of runs that are much better than the book or the movies they adapt.
Yeah, I think if you're making a superhero movie, you should be public about what comics influenced it and suggest people go read them. So I think that's super cool. The last movie announced is the least amount of information about it, but I am out of my mind excited about it. What'd you say?
I said, and one of the ones I'm most excited for.
Swamp Thing. They're making a Swamp Thing movie. He says it's going to be a dark horror film exploring the origins of the character of Swamp Thing, and I can't wait. Love that character. And I loved they did a show in 2019. They did one season of it. It canceled. The show was great because the show was like an R-rated horror thing. I hope that this is also an R-rated horror thing. It's great. I'm very excited about it. And certainly is a tone that is going to be wildly different from any of those other movies that we just talked about. Like Swamp Thing being a dark horror film. Like how is he going to team up with Batman when they meet in whatever crossover thing, you know? And speaking of Batman, you were right, Steve. He did touch on the Batman sequel, which apparently is officially called The Batman Part 2. Not the most inventive title.
Well, you know, whatever.
You know,
not everything needs a fancy one. I guess when it's the Batman, it's like when the first one was titled The Batman, you pretty much knew you weren't going for flashy titles.
Yeah, I guess not. Also, like, how many inventive Batman movie titles can you come up with before? Like, The Brave and the Bold, that's cool. The word Batman is not in the name of that movie. Like, that's great. I love it. And the Batman Part 2, they said there's a date for it. It's coming out October 3rd, 2025. So only a couple months after we're getting a new Superman movie, we're getting a sequel to the Batman. So that'll be cool. Moving into the TV series that have been announced. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just... My brain went and tangented off your rant about them telling you about the books and what books to read.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about half of the Marvel ones that have done that, where the ones they refer to aren't even remotely pertinent to.
Oh yeah.
Like I get Days of Future Past, yes. Apocalypse, not as much.
Yeah. Even like Captain America Civil War, like that story is wildly different.
Completely different. Yeah. Well,
and we can't say that this Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow isn't going to be different than the book. I'm sure it's going to be different than the book in some ways,
right.
But it's, I don't know. An adaptation is an adaptation. Things are going to change, but regardless, direct us towards comics. But maybe not too much because Steve and I are going to start this cool Instagram thing.
Yeah.
And we want people to come to us. So, when talking about the TV series, they made sure to specify that they're not treating the series as anything lesser than the films. They said, quote, just another way to tell a story. And they specified that actors from the shows will appear in the films and vice versa. So this isn't going to be a thing where they are separate. They are part of the story. They are integral to the story. If there's a Green Lantern in a show, it's going to be the Green Lantern in the movies. So, Steve, let's talk about this other insane deep cut, which is going to be the first project that we see from James Gunn's DCU. It's already in production. It is an animated series called Creature Commandos.
And this was the first thing he mentioned, and
I was
sitting there. I was like,
announcement.
I have less than no clue what this is.
Did you look at the image that they showed?
Yeah, they had up on the screen,
which I think is a production still. They didn't specify that, but I think that is what the characters will actually look like.
It's kind of got an Invincible meets.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Do you have it up in front of you right now?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you recognize any of those characters?
Nope.
No.
Oh, yes. Weasel.
No other characters look familiar to you? Just in general, like general life.
Like the ones.
What about that?
The ones that all look like Marvel characters.
What about the big green guy in the back?
Is this a trick
What
question?
does that look like? No, it's not a trick question. He's stitched up, got bolts on his head.
Yeah. Frankenstein?
That is Frankenstein.
Okay.
That is the Frankenstein monster. See that woman standing in front of him?
Yeah.
With the hair?
Yeah.
That is the Bride of Frankenstein.
Okay. Okay. This is weird.
I'm just laughing. Yeah, they're DC.
That's Eric Frankenstein.
Yes, Frankenstein's monster is going to be a part
Eric.
of the DCU. Yep.
Frankenstein's monster is named Eric. Come on. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know why he's called Eric. I noticed that too. So yeah, in the picture that was released, seems like the main cast is Rick Flag Senior.
That's Rick Flag. Well, Rick Flag's dad.
Senior. So the father of the Flag that we saw in Suicide Squad. Nina Marzuski, Dr. Phosphorus is a villain that I know of. Eric Frankenstein. I don't know why he's called Eric Frankenstein. G.I. Robot and Weasel. Weasel is also in Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad, sorry. And confirmed that the leader of the team will be the Bride of Frankenstein. Now, I'm just making me laugh a lot because, yes, DC Comics has Frankenstein show up every once in a while. Sometimes he's got his own. He's had his own run. He's had his own series, Frankenstein or whatever, and he's been he's had his own monster team before. But you're telling me now. Okay, he said he also, because this is part of the reason that I'm going to get into in a second. They're looking to cast people to do the voices, actors that will be able to do the voice and also portray the characters in live action. So, like Lucasfilm has been doing with like Clone Wars actors, if they can get them to do the live action version, that they will. So that's telling me that there's a DC team-up movie in my future which will feature Superman and Frankenstein and the same team. I think is hilarious.
Yeah, when you asked me that, it confused the hell out of me because if you pull up this image, you see what looks to be Omni-Man on the left from Invincible, which is Rick Flag Sr.
That's true.
And then like this
possible Ghost Rider.
Yeah, Dr. Phosphorus looked like Ghost Rider standing next to the Hulk of Frankenstein because he's green, and I'm just like,
green.
This is a trick question.
Yeah. No. You're Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the robot.
Frankenstein also has connections to Swamp Thing in continuity.
It's a green thing, isn't it?
Yeah, because they're both green. Yeah, they're buddies. It's not easy being green. This chapter is called Gods and Monsters. They're talking about...
Hold on. I now need the complete crossover of Swamp Thing, Frankenstein, and Kermit sitting in a swamp. Just singing.
Oh, man. Have you seen that original Muppet movie that starts with Kermit singing Rainbow Connection in like a swamp? How amazing would it be if Swamp Thing just came out of the back and like joined in for the final chorus?
You see Swamp Thing and Man Thing just come up and like singing over his shoulders. Oh, that'd be great. Oh, wow.
Oh, God. Make that. I guess they'd. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would have to be Man Thing because they're all owned. by the same
they are owned by Disney,
company.
so
they could do that with Man Thing.
Yeah, so instead of Frankenstein and Swamp Thing, it's Man Thing and the Hulk. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Man. Anyway, Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein are they exist in DC Comics continuity, and apparently they're going to exist in the DCU continuity as well. And I'm excited about that. I feel like James Gunn knows what he's doing. I'm sure Frankenstein isn't going to show up in Superman Legacy, but he may show up in Swamp Thing or something, or if they continue down the road. Like I was about to say, it's called Gods and Monsters, and so they're delivering on those monsters for sure, which I'm excited about. So Creature Commandos is an animated series that's already in production. That's going to be the first thing that we see. The second thing that we see before any of the movies, the Superman Legacy is going to be the first movie that we see, and that's not till 2025. So assumedly Creature Commandos and this next one is going to come out probably 2024. I can't imagine. I mean, I guess it could be late 2023, but you'd think they'd already have a date,
right? If
that was the case. So this is something we heard rumored a while ago, but Waller, a series about Amanda Waller, spinning out of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker Season 1. Viola Davis is confirmed to be returning as Amanda Waller. I mean, that's just like such perfect casting. I can't imagine you wanting to get rid of Viola. She's an Oscar-winning actress, and she's playing such a strong character and such a great interpretation of that character. Yes, bring her back. Amazing. She's going to be leading the series. It's going to take place between Peacemaker Season 1 and Peacemaker Season 2, which we did not hear anything about. We did not hear anything about Peacemaker Season 2. And I'm not sure why. Well, they said there's going to be more announcements coming down. They probably want to get this out of the way because it's coming out before Peacemaker Season 2. But anyway, characters from the Peacemaker team will appear on that show. And this series is being worked on by Crystal Henry, who wrote on Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver of Doom Patrol. So this one is one I'm very excited about. Very excited about it.
So this is the book of Amanda Waller.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And the image that they showed when in the video, James Gunn's video, when they talked about this, was her being led away in handcuffs, which kind of ties into the end of Peacemaker season 1, spoilers for that show, where her daughter kind of outed the Task Force X and like the operations of the Suicide Squad. And so she's probably going to be getting in some trouble. That's probably where this show is going to spin off.
And I've somehow forgotten her character and the actor's name, and all I can think of is Tasty from Orange is the New Black.
It was like right on the tip of my tongue until you said Tasty from Orange is the New Black.
And I just threw it for you.
I can think about too. Yeah.
And
I don't rewatch a lot of shows, but I should rewatch Peacemaker. I would like to see that again.
Oh god, that was so good.
You
could just watch the intro on repeat.
Yeah, that's enough, really. That's all I really need. Were you about to say something before I moved on?
Probably. Apparently we were both right on the next one in that they did announce that joining the slate will be not one but 2 Green Lanterns, with the series Lanterns starring both Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart.
Hell yeah. Now, this is another show I've never seen, but everyone in the world tells me at least how season 1 is incredible.
Yeah,
they
same.
Compared this show, Lanterns, to True Detective. So saying this is a True Detective-style mystery show. James Gunn said it's a terrestrial-based mystery, which I assume means Earth-based, that leads into the overall story that we're telling, an ancient horror on Earth. They're like intergalactic super cops working in Precinct Earth to discover a dark mystery. So I can't imagine that we're not going to get any space stuff at all, like at least to set up the fact that they are space cops and they come from, their rings come from an alien race or whatever.
Well,
it seems like they have to at least touch on that.
I think he did mention that other Lanterns would show up, so.
He did, yeah. He said there might be a few other Lanterns that show up, but Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart are going to be the main 2, and I think those are perfect choices. And yeah, it seems like this is going to be kind of the basis for whatever grows into the bigger conflict that they're building towards. So I am definitely down for that. Sounds wonderful. Something else that sounds wonderful, and man, this pitch is like, you could give me a 1-sentence pitch on this, and I would be like, that's a home run out of the park. A show called Paradise Lost, which here's the sentence you would have to tell me to sell me on this. It's Game of Thrones that takes place on Themyscira.
Right.
That's what they literally are saying. Game of Thrones. It says it's a Wonder Woman prequel series. Takes place before the Wonder Woman movies or before Diana's even born, I believe. Takes place on Themyscira, exploring the genesis of that society and the political games that they kind of play with each other to get to the top in the style of Game of Thrones. That's like me summarizing what I read about it, but
yeah. No, that's the gist of what they dropped on it, and it seems
all you got to tell me
intriguing.
is Themyscira, Game of Thrones, and I'm in 100%. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Now, I guess how much backstory is there on that, or are they freewheeling on something like this?
I know that there has been a lot written about the history. Just recently there's been a series of like Wonder Woman Historia about, I believe it's about the Amazons as a culture. And there's also been, like Gail Simone's run on Wonder Woman. It's kind of like the origin of her birth specifically, but it does touch on like how the island was run and who was in charge and other forces that maybe thought that they shouldn't be in charge. So like there's definitely like things they can dive into. I'm not sure how long, I don't know how many seasons they could get out of it, but if they start freewheeling, then I'm sure they can go in anywhere. I mean, it's not like, I don't think that stuff is so cemented in canon that fans are going to erupt if they don't nail.
You obviously haven't seen Fandom.
Well, yeah, of course they'll look for anything to get upset about, but
we didn't want you to make this Wonder Woman movie, but you're making it the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I am. I don't know. This seems like a slam dunk to me. I gotta say.
If they can pull off how they're pitching it, then yeah,
exactly. And I mean, HBO, they know how to make a Game of Thrones because they're the ones that make Game of Thrones. So as long as they're throwing the right amount of money at this, then I think.
And we also know they know how to make a horror movie based on a video game, because holy shit.
Man, God, yes.
Yeah, right. If you haven't watched The Last of Us,
quick shout out for The Last of Us.
Yeah, at least make it to see your episode 3, because that was some of literally the best television I've ever watched.
Episode 3 of The Last of Us is one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life.
And it's nothing like what you would expect after watching the first 2.
Exactly. I got emotional multiple times during that show. It was long too. It was like over an hour.
It was like an hour and 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, so good, incredible. Like, I don't know when the Emmys are.
Yeah,
but they better remember this show whenever the Emmys come around, because goddamn.
Well, speaking of something that is definitely not going to win an Emmy.
Hey, you don't know that. You haven't seen it yet.
True. Just by the way, they're much like Paradise Lost. How they're pitching it is doesn't seem like normal Emmy material.
Nah, well, I don't know. I might have even said on this podcast, I think that this character it's insane that they haven't been utilized more in movies and TV. Yeah. I think he showed up in Smallville. He's been in the cartoons.
And you called for it on Sunday.
What's that?
You did call this on Sunday.
Did I say this on Sunday? Yep. Oh, good for me. Patting myself on the back. Booster Gold. They're making a Booster Gold series. Now, the description that James Gunn gives us, Booster Gold is a loser from the future who steals future technology to travel back in time and become a superhero. It's basically imposter syndrome as a superhero. That's how James Gunn describes it. Booster Gold is somebody, I think, canonically, he's like a football player in the 25th century who gets injured or can't play anymore, and he learns about how, back in the 21st century, there was all these superheroes, the golden age of superheroes flying around and saving people. And he's like, oh, we got all this technology here in the future. If I steal this and go back in time, I could be one of those superheroes and be famous. And so, like, it's very much Iron Man 1 Tony Stark kind of vibes of like, I'm just in this for like the fame and the money, and aren't I super cool? And but throughout his journey, he's got to learn what it means to be a real hero. He's got to learn the importance of, looking out for other people and all that kind of stuff. So like, there's a great character arc in there. And that's just his story. Like that's just his origin story. And that's like a tremendous arc for a series or a movie. And I am so excited. And shout out to my partner in comic book making, Riley McFarlane, who refers to Booster Gold as her son. She loves him unconditionally so much. So she's very excited as well. As am I, because, like I said, very underutilized character, very fun, very funny. Also has a canonical best friend in Blue Beetle. Not the Jaime Reyes version, but the Ted Kord version. And if it's the rumors are true that Ted Kord is going to appear in the Blue Beetle movie, then you got your Ted Kord and you're getting your Booster Gold. So let's get some blue and gold action going. That's all I'm saying.
There you go.
So there we go. That's it, everybody. That is all the information that we have to pass on to you, the listener. Steve, give me some highlights as far as this slate goes. What is most appealing to you? What are you most excited about from these movies and shows? Give me a couple.
Give you one of each.
Sure. Yeah.
TV series, I really want to say Creature Commandos, but it's probably got to be Lanterns just to see what they're going to do with it.
I know.
Paradise Lost, I just worry that they're not going to pull off the hype that they're putting into it by saying, in the style of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, comparing it to one of the most famous television shows of all time. Yeah.
And then movies, it should be Swamp Thing, but it's probably Brave and Bold.
I know. I mean, you're asking me to, pick between just all the loves of my life, so it's very hard. Honestly, for movies, I think it's Superman, just because, like, it's been so long. Like, I loved Henry Cavill as Superman, but I didn't think the movies really suited the character as much as they should have, and it seems like they're really doing their best to fix that. So I'm just really excited about being able to see a Superman movie that I believe in. Obviously, I'm excited for Brave and the Bold and Supergirl and Swamp Thing at the same time.
Cavill was definitely the right Superman in the wrong movies.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I think I will also go with Lanterns or Booster Gold, just because I love Booster Gold as a character. But, you know, I've loved Green Lantern since I was 4 or whatever. So, like, to see a good version of Green Lantern in live action will be very exciting for me. So, yeah. So there it is. Any final thoughts? There. Anything else? I mean, we've been talking a long time, but is there anything that you want to comment on? Or
no, it's kind of funny. I like going into this. I don't know if I actually the hype meter had rose for what was coming and then fell back down. I think for me initially, like before it was revealed, it was almost like, oh, okay, yeah, they're doing something. It's kind of great, and then.
We just kept talking about it week after week, spinning our wheels like, okay, talking about these rumors.
Right. With this, I was talking to another one of my friends, and he's like, well, they didn't really announce a direction. They just announced everything. Like, there was no, and it's like, yeah, but it kind of works for this. And they're trying to lay the groundwork. And I think it'll be, I think it looks like it'll be what we were hoping, where it's not just the A-listers, it's fleshing out a bunch of stuff and can get weird and wonky, and why not?
Yeah, they referred to having diamond characters, I think is what the phrase they used. Mm-hmm. Like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman being their diamond characters. And they wanted to make sure they were utilizing them, but also utilizing them to pick up their other character, like the lesser known characters, and make the lesser known characters diamond characters. So I think you're right. I think I think this is a good mix of recognizable, less recognizable, and not recognizable at all. And don't forget, tell your friend, this is not everything. They made it clear this is not all of even chapter 1.
Right.
This is an 8. I guess they didn't say how. They said their plan is from 8 to 10 years. I don't know if 8 to 10 years is all of chapter 1. But I think one of the articles I read said they were looking at maybe like 2 movies and 2 shows a year. So they're not even like doing the Marvel like 3 to 4. Like they're pacing themselves in a way that I think is going to benefit them.
Which they probably should. We've talked about it on this show enough, how burnout is a real thing.
Yeah, and they talked about in the I guess I didn't include this on the rundown, but I think I mentioned it earlier. How they talked about how did I tell you, did we talk about how he took a shot at Marvel? About having he mentioned something about, he didn't say Marvel specifically, but he said something like movies today aren't as good as they used to be because they're just trying to hit a date and they start shooting before the script is finished, before they have a third act. And so you get to the third act of the movie and no one knows what's going on because they wrote it, yesterday. That is a shot at Marvel because Marvel's been criticized for that. Marvel, admittedly, actors have said we started shooting before the script was done. Like, that's something that they have to do in order to hit their dates. And it really seems like they're going for a quality over quantity approach, which I think is great. Oh yeah, that remark was in a response to a question about superhero fatigue. And they said, I don't think it's superhero fatigue. I think it's bad movie fatigue. I think if you are giving people a good product, then they'll keep watching it. But because of the rushed, because they're hitting dates over, because it's been a quantity over quality thing, seemingly. So I kind of believe in that, and I'm excited for this. Like I think I said a few weeks ago, like I hope 10 years from now I'm sick of all the DC stuff that's in my face that I have to watch. Like I kind of am getting with the Marvel stuff, but if they're pacing themselves, it might take more than 10 years for me to get start feeling tired of it. So we'll see. We will see. And that's it. I think that's all we got, people. It's everything.
Yeah.
No, did we talk long enough? Hour and a half?
Hour and 17. We're there.
Okay. That's better. That's better.
So after an hour and 17 of hearing about DC things, feel free to subscribe, and let us know if you want to hear more about DC things or if we should shut the hell up about that.
I can't imagine there's going to be any huge DC news next week. So next week might be our first week in a while without any DC updates.
Yeah, most of the cat is out of the bag at this juncture, I think.
Yeah.
So outside of Flash Watch, we may be clear sailing.
Yep.
So yeah, like, subscribe, let us know what you're thinking. The Multiverse Report on the socials, multiverseport@gmail.com, themultiverseport.com. Yeah, like, subscribe, leave us a review.
Yep. Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Hit us
Absolutely.
up. So that's it.
Check out our new Instagram story thing, whatever we're doing.
Yeah, maybe we'll start doing I got some time this week. Maybe I'll be able to do some Instagram stories about what to read to catch up in time for. I mean, in time, you have years before a lot of these are coming out.
In the next 2 years, take a look at these movies or these books.
Yeah. Read these 2 issues sometime in the next 3 years.
Yep.
But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And until next time, we will see you in the multiverse.
Okay.